Eastern Poland, November 1943. There are men who die in war, and there are men who are destroyed by it. I was the second kind. Not a bullet, not a bomb, a single command, issued in my own voice, sealed my fate. The order that ended everything I had ever loved came from my own lips on a cold Tuesday morning in November 1943, in the courtyard of the Railway Command Depot in Zamość, Eastern Poland. I gave it because I had no choice. That is what I have told myself every night for the rest of my life. My name is Alexander Nowak. I was born in Krakow in 1901, the son of a schoolteacher and a seamstress who believed, above all things, in the idea of Poland. When the Germans came in September 1939, I was a major in the Polish Army, 38 years old, with a wife named Helena and a son named Tomasz who had just turned 19. Tomasz used to fix watches. He had the patience for small things, the kind of patience that makes a man lower his voice in an argument, that makes him wait for the right moment instead of forcing it. He had his mother's gray eyes and her habit of going very still when something troubled him, as if stillness itself were a form of thinking. I used to watch him bent over his work table in the evenings, a loop pressed to his eye, fingers moving through the tiny brass gears of someone else's broken timepiece, and I thought, this boy will never be a soldier. He was too careful for it, too precise, too aware of how easily small things break. I was wrong about that. I was wrong about several things. When Warsaw fell, I did not lay down my arms. I made contact with the Armia Krajowa, the home army, and within 6 months I had been given a different kind of assignment. The Germans needed engineers. They were rebuilding rail lines across occupied Poland to supply the Eastern Front, and they were trusting certain Poles to oversee the labor. I spoke German. I had an engineering background. I was calm under pressure. I was, in every external sense, exactly the kind of collaborator the Wehrmacht was looking for. I became Hauptmann Karl Brandt. Not officially, there was no such officer in any German record, but in the Zamość garrison, to the officers who drank with me and shared their maps with me and complained about the cold, I was Karl Brandt, a half-German Pole who had chosen the correct side of history. It took 14 months to build that trust. 14 months of smiling at things that made my stomach turn. 14 months of sending intelligence west through a chain of couriers whose names I never learned, because the less you knew, the less you could confess. By the autumn of 1943, I was embedded deep enough to know the movement of 3 separate Wehrmacht supply columns a week before they moved. Dozens of ambushes. Hundreds of German soldiers killed on the roads between Zamość and Belgorod, between Belgorod and Lublin. The Armia Krajowa called me one of their most valuable assets. I did not feel valuable. I felt like a man standing in water that was slowly rising around his chest, unable to move. What I did not know, what Helena did not tell me in the brief, coded letters that reached me every few weeks, was that Tomasz had joined the resistance. He was 22 by then. He had his mother's patience, yes, but also something harder underneath it, something I recognized only because I had felt it myself at his age. He had joined a partisan unit operating south of Lublin. He was good at it, they said later. Patient. Precise. He approached war the way he had approached broken watches, carefully, quietly, with total attention to the mechanism. I found this out on the morning of November 9, 1943, when Oberstleutnant Friedrich Metz walked into the mess with a list of names. Metz was the kind of officer who made occupation look effortless. He was from Stuttgart, I think, or somewhere near it, a man who ironed his uniform even when there was no reason to, who drank his coffee black and without hurry, who looked at poles the way a farmer looks at weather, not with hatred, simply with the calm assessment of something that must be managed. He had never once looked at me with suspicion. That was the thing about Metz. He was not cruel in any particular way. He was merely indifferent to the difference between cruelty and order. He stood in the doorway that morning with his cigarette and his list and read me the names of 3 captured partisans with the flat boredom of a man reading a grocery list. The third name was Tomasz Nowak. I remember the sound the room made after he said it. Nothing. No sound at all. The world had simply stopped producing noise for a moment, as if the air itself understood what was happening and chose to hold its breath. I heard my own heartbeat. I heard the distant clanking of a freight car somewhere in the depot yard. I heard Metz say, "Brandt, you understand the procedure," and I heard my own voice say, "Yes, sir." Understood. He lit a new cigarette off the end of the old one and left without looking back. I thought about running. I spent exactly 4 seconds thinking about it, 4 seconds in which I calculated whether I could reach Tomasz before they did, whether I could get us both out of the garrison and into the forest before the alarm was raised, whether Helena could be warned in time. 4 seconds. That is all the time a man has, sometimes, to decide who he is. If I ran, I would be exposed. The network would be exposed. The courier chain, the contacts in Lublin, the officer in Krakow who had been feeding us German troop positions for 2 years, all of it would unravel behind me. Hundreds of people. Dozens of operations. And the Germans would know the scale of the breach, which meant they would hunt every name connected to me until there was no one left to hunt. Tomasz was one life. I have never hated a truth as much as I hated that one. They brought the 3 of them out into the courtyard at 9 in the morning. The depot yard was enclosed on 3 sides by brick walls and on the 4th by the main depot building, its windows dark. It had snowed the night before and the ground was white and very still. The only sounds were boots on frozen gravel and, somewhere above us, the wind moving through the telegraph wires that ran along the rail line. Metz watched from the 2nd floor balcony, smoking, the way a man watches rain, not with interest, simply with the patience of someone waiting for something to finish. 2 of the prisoners I did not know, young men, one of them barely old enough to shave, his lip trembling though the rest of him was rigidly still, fighting with everything he had to not let it show. Thomas walked between them with his hands bound behind his back and his coat missing, wearing only a thin shirt in the November cold. He was thinner than I remembered. He had grown a beard. He looked, in some terrible way, exactly like me at his age. He saw me when they were perhaps 10 meters away. I watched his face go through several things in very quick succession. Confusion first, the way you look at something that cannot be what it appears to be. Then recognition. Then, behind that, something I cannot name and have never been able to name. Not anger. Not fear. Something quieter than both of those. Something that looked almost, and this is the word that has stayed with me, like understanding. He did not say my name. He was smart enough for that, even then. He understood, in that moment, everything, what I was, what I had been doing, and what was about to happen, and why. 6 soldiers took their positions. Behind them, I heard the mechanical sound of bolts being drawn back, one after another, and then the brief silence as the weapons were raised. Snow had gathered in the open chambers of the rifles and now fell in small white fragments as the barrels leveled. The boy with the trembling lip closed his eyes. The other man stared straight ahead at nothing. Thomas looked at me. I walked to him. I told the guards, in German, that I needed a moment with the prisoners for identification purposes, final intelligence, the kind of bureaucratic fiction that officers used when they needed 30 seconds that no one would question. Metz, on the balcony, did not stir. I stood in front of my son and I looked at him and he looked at me and neither of us spoke. Then I reached up slowly, so the guards would not react, and I placed my hands over his eyes. His face was very cold. I could feel him breathing shallow, steady, controlled, the way he had breathed as a boy when he was trying not to cry and did not want me to know it. I said, in Polish, very quietly, I am sorry. Your mother will know what you were. You were brave. You were more than I deserved. He said nothing. But he did not pull away. He stood very still with my hands over his eyes, and I felt rather than heard the sound that moved through his chest, not a cry, something smaller and older than a cry, something that was over almost before it began. I held my hands there for another moment. Then I stepped back. Then I gave the order. The sound the rifles made crossed the courtyard and hit the brick walls and came back. The snow absorbed some of it. Not enough. I finished the war. I went on sending intelligence. I went on smiling at Friedrich Metz over meals and nodding at briefings and being Karl Brandt, trusted officer, good German Pole, for another 18 months, until the Red Army rolled west in January 1945 and the garrison dissolved overnight, and I walked out of a burning depot building in February and became Alexander Nowak again. Helena was alive. She had survived, hidden by a farming family in a village outside Krakow. When I found her, She already knew about Tom, as a survivor from his unit had reached her 4 months before. She opened the door and looked at me, and I could see that she knew something else too, though no one had told her, because she was Helena and she had always been able to read me like a document. She let me in. She made tea. We sat in a cold kitchen and neither of us spoke for a very long time. She never asked me directly. I never told her directly. We carried it between us for the rest of our lives like a piece of furniture that was too large to move and too heavy to throw away, always there, always in the way, always making the rooms feel smaller than they were. When she died in 1971, she was holding my hand and she looked at me for a long moment before the end, and whatever she saw there she took with her. There are men who will tell you that in war, you make impossible choices and you live with them. This is true. What they do not tell you is that living with them is not the same as surviving them. I covered his eyes so he would not have to watch. I have wondered, every day since, whether I did it for him or whether I did it so that he could not look at me when it happened. I still do not know the answer. I am not sure, anymore, that there is one. Historical note: the Armia Krajowa intelligence archives, partially declassified in 1992, contain references to an embedded operative known only as Hauptmann Brandt, a Polish agent who operated within the Zamość railway garrison between 1942 and 1945. Historians credit his intelligence with disrupting at least 4 major German supply operations in the Lublin district during the winter of 1943. His true identity was never officially confirmed. The files list his status, simply, as origin unknown, fate unknown. He was not unknown. He was just a father.